invite everybody and make sure you all know that we're having Old Home Days. August 4th, we're asking for as many volunteers as possible. Even if you just want to volunteer on just that day, please come and sign up. We're going to have another meeting June 21st in the Historical Society at 6 o'clock. Please, anybody that would like to even do a little bit, just come and sign up, sit in on a meeting, hear what we're doing. And we're asking everybody if you could stop and see me after the meeting, buy one of our t-shirts for $13. This is part of our fundraising activity. We're going to make sure that almost all the events are very low to no cost. So please buy a t-shirt from me. I'll be there after the meeting. Thank you guys.
Welcome to the historic Chesterfield Town Hall. My name is Pam Walton and I'm Vice President of the Chesterfield Historical Society. And as a director of CHS, I'd like to tell you briefly about our present project, the Stone House. With the help of over 150 people here in town and a few other people outside of town, we bought the Stone House in April. We are now working towards opening it as a museum, and it will be a while. But we have many projects and committees that we could use people on. So if you would be interested in helping us with one of your many skills, or without any skill, because we have cleaning to be done, please let me know, or take a flyer over on the table here, and at the end of the meeting you will see our website and you can contact us via that. Should you wish to learn more about this historic building, the other thing is that we just happen to have a book about it. Well, the Chesterfield Town Hall, our heritage, our centerpiece, it would make a wonderful Father's Day present. It is $10, and there is a jar here where you can put your money. The other thing that we would sell you at a severely reduced price now is our 2018 calendar for $6, and the historic photos are worth the $6.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Audrey Erickson, our own Audrey, wrote the Town Hall book. On this same table, this is a table you should pass by, please. We have a flyer here with a list of our events coming up for this summer. So our next will be in July. It's Discoveries Under the Connecticut. We will have Annette Spaulding, who is a scuba diver, telling us about her finds in the last few years. You may have seen her on the front page of the Sentinel about a month ago. In August, Wednesday, August 8th, we'll have Rudyard Kipling Revisited. The reason we chose Rudyard Kipling is because Gusty Pierce, the last member of the Pierce family to own the Stone House, loved Rudyard Kipling. And I also had seen this guy present, and I knew he was wonderful. August 29th, we'll have a program about town meetings in New Hampshire called Moved and Seconded. It's a humorist review of a town meeting. Fantastic one. Rebecca Rule, if you've ever seen her present, she does several programs. And just a reminder that on Wednesday, October 17th, we'll have our annual Chesterfield Historical Society meeting, potluck, elections, update, and what's happening with the Stone House. Our program tonight is entitled History of Pisgah, or should I say Pisgah, a favorite location for hikers. Later in the program, you'll also be told by Lynne Borofsky what hikes will be coming up and where you can meet these hikes. But first, you're going to hear from Kim Nilsen. Kim is our own town not grown up here, but moved here, I believe, about 1981.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. I knew that because that was when my daughter's was born. He is a well-known outdoorsman, and he's been Friends of Pisgah on and off volunteer for about 2 decades. He has designed and built trails from Massachusetts to Canada, and he's the founder of the 170-mile
Coas.
I know, I never pronounced that. When I went up to the Boston, I'd hear that. Cohos Trail in northern New Hampshire. He's also the author of several hiking guidebooks, trail data books, a novel, and a collection of short stories. Do you play any instruments? He's a Renaissance man, in other words. So without further ado, Kim Nilsen.
Gee, I didn't think I'd draw a crowd, Anyway, I'm going to do a little presentation. This is the short version of something that's about 3 days long, and it has something to do, has a little to do with Pisgah, has a lot to do with this part of the world, the Northeast and New England. This goes back a long time. This goes back 41,000 years to start this program. This program is a disaster. It is recent science that's come to fore that people don't know a great deal about, maybe don't know anything about, but this program will show you 3 events that took place that shaped our world and make it possible for us to be right here, right now, in the form that we're in the nature of our human nature today. Okay, so let me shut up and start this thing. Okay, 41,000 years ago, this thing is the best image I can find of this supernova explosion, 300,000 light years away, which is literally in our own backyard, cosmic speaking. Okay, and this event, or something like this event, will change humans and human history. Okay, humans, soon after this event, soon begin painting on cave walls, soon begin using symbols, soon begin crafting much more sophisticated stone tools. Now, why would that be? Don't know yet. We'll find out. But we're locked in an ice age. We're in the middle of a very 100,000 year ice age. This is the maximum of that age. As cold as can be. Most of North America, Canada, northern United States as it is today, Siberia, most of northern Europe, the Rocky Mountains, the southern caldera, the Andes, covered with snow and ice. Here, right here, it's a mile thick. And there are no humans in the Northeast here, probably not in North America yet, but this place is inhabited by the Pleistocene megafauna. The imperial mammoth, the mastodon, the woolly mammoth, and so on. The American lion, half again as big as the African lion. The saber-toothed cat there, the giant sloth, the camel, the horse. Bison. Our continent is a frigid Serengeti populated with a vast herd of animals adapted to ice age conditions. Okay? Now, fast forward. 34,000 years ago, the shock wave. That was good timing. Okay. The shock wave from that supernova, whichever one it was, Jaminga we think, but not necessarily, passes. It's moving slower, of course, than the radiation wave that came through in 41,000 years ago, but it brings with it a spike in cosmic radiation at ground level, and it brings with it micro-sized bits of elements, uridium, iron, titanium, and radioactive potassium and thorium and things of that nature. Okay? Isolated regions of the world get hammered by these tiny, infinitely tiny fragments, okay? And kill off some of the animals in the Pleistocene environment, okay? A mass extinction event is underway, okay? It's underway, and it's still underway. The first hints that the Ice Age will end, this is 18,000 years ago now, we're leapfrogging fast, show up. The world is just beginning to show signs that the temperatures will rise around the world, okay? Over the next 2,000 years, temperatures almost reach what they are today, and the vast Laurentide ice sheet which covers North America begins to melt. And when it does, as it does, the glacier slowly retreat and the megafauna move into the northeast. And who comes along with them? My relatives come along. These are humans moving with the megafauna because that's food, and there is no competition in the northeast for the humans that are there, that come in, okay? There's no warfare, there's no struggle, there's no strife, there's no resource dickering. So they move and they hunt the beasts for food, of course. You always see paleo people fighting mammoths for some reason, when most of the time they were hunting small game. Okay? And they want to occupy this dangerous environment filled with things like saber-toothed cats. Now, about that time, the final debris wave of that supernova passes through the solar system silently and disrupts the orbits of the small celestial bodies in the solar system. But that's fine and dandy. Now we're at 12,800 years ago, and the Northeast is fast being liberated from its ice cover. It is warm in the summertime, it is frightfully cold still in the wintertime, but the seasons have arrived, they're back again, and it's spring in the Northeast. And the wave of humans that come into this part of the world are what are called the Clovis Culture people. The Clovis are, well, it says, is probably a number in the hundreds of thousands across North America, and they begin to show up here. And this is what they do. Remember I mentioned sophisticated stone tools, very sophisticated blades, very sophisticated utensils. This is a Clovis point. These are Clovis points. They are among the most highly sought after paleo objects of all. They are double-sided stone implements. Beautiful. Okay? And they are named after a site in Clovis, New Mexico, which is the first site where this particular culture was identified, and now there are dozens and dozens and dozens of Clovis sites unearthed around the world. And this is what they faced when they came in here. That's the continental United States, of course, and that's the ice sheet. Over there is the Appalachian Mountains, and New England is undercover, okay? But New England gets freed up, thank goodness, from its ice cover. For the world now, Clovis are in here for the shortest period of time, but the world they live in is going to change, and it's going to change dramatically. The Pleistocene is going to come to an end, and the Holocene, which is what we live in, this epoch we live in, is called. For in the spring equinox of the year, in 12,800 years ago, lights appear in the sky. Humans record these lights in the sky. They are orally passed down, those stories, to us today. They are in some of the great religious writings of the world. If you're familiar with Enoch, in some religious texts, he talks about the 7 lights in the sky coming to earth, okay? It's more than 7 that come to earth. We're in a few minutes now, the worst day in the history of the planet since the dinosaurs' demise 65 million years ago occurs. For a comet debris storm. Anybody go out and watch comets in the torrid meteor stream? Anybody seen the torrid meteor showers? Go out on a fall night when the torrids are out. You see a shooting star, if you're lucky, every 15 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, that sort of thing. The torrids. This comes out of the torrid meteor shower stream, okay? And the northern continents of the world are bombarded by a comet debris storm. Explode. Some of them come in and explode as air bursts. Has anybody ever heard of the Tunguska event in Russia in 1908, excuse me? Anybody? Air burst over Siberia, 2,000 square miles of trees felled. Boom. And some of this stuff comes down on the Laurentide ice sheet, lands to the south of it, and in the Atlantic Ocean. And here are some evidence of cometary debris strikes, not full-size comets, but cometary debris strikes in our region, okay? Nova Scotia, up near Anticosti Island, Lake Ontario, okay? Here's Pisgah down there. It's about a foot away from that one. You know, they come down. In some cases, they're coming down on ice. In some cases, they're coming down on the land. The comet debris, impacting at 70,000 miles an hour, generates heat as intense as the surface of the sun from each of these things and sets the North American continent ablaze. It sets the continent on fire. I will show you a slide way later that shows you what that looks like today. The heat from the strikes liberates billions of tons of water from the great ice sheets, okay? Billions of tons of water. Massive floods surge off the top of the flash-melted ice caps and gush underneath because the comet's particles slam down into the ice sheet, and the water that's under any glacier, moving under any glacier, gets pushed out. And the debris strikes the oceans. Imagine an object hitting the ocean at 70,000 miles an hour. Can you imagine the energy that is imparted to the water in the ocean when that happens? Some of the waves they think are 400 feet high. Some of the waves they think in some parts of the world are over 1,000 feet high. In England and in Scotland, there is ocean sand in the sediments down, whatever, 10 feet. Ocean sediments that cover the entire area, the entire landmass in southern England and Scotland. There are seashells that are unfossilized on the Andes Mountains. There are saltwater seas inland in Russia. Oral Sea, the Caspian Sea, saltwater seas. So much water is liberated by the comet debris strikes that the water level in the world rises some 50 feet in an eye blink period of time. Most settlements that people thrive in are on the coasts. There is seafood all the time. There is ocean vegetables, you know, kelp and whatever, things that people eat constantly. Even in the coldest of streams, you could always get your food at the ocean. So settlements are all along the ocean, and those settlements disappear. And here, I've got 2 slides of this. This is something else entirely, okay? These look like little puddles. And in fact, they're gigantic puddles which have gone, have evaporated away, and now they are soil in North Carolina. These were formed by flying, get this, flying icebergs. Okay? Not a few, not 100, not 1,000, hundreds of thousands. This is 12 towns in North Carolina. 12 towns in North Carolina. These are called, these circles, which are NASA put on with white ink. These circles, hundreds of them there, over 12 towns, are what are called the Carolina Bays. They run from Staten Island to Mississippi. They also run from Nebraska through Oklahoma and Kansas is down to northern Texas. These are what's left of melted ice bombs that come off the ice sheet. They are going 1,000 miles, some of them more. These are real. You can visit this stuff. They are farms, they are businesses, they are towns, and they are there. Okay? This is real stuff. And it snows, and it snows, and it rains, and it rains. 40 days and 40 nights. That sound familiar? Where does that come from? That comes from an event in the biosphere of ultra-dramatic scale, okay? In other words, the writers of the Bible are talking about something real. In the book of Gilgamesh, in the Middle East, same thing. They're talking about something real. All our native cultures in the United States that survived this thing have oral traditions that speak of this. And the interior flooding of the North American continent is catastrophic. These are the channeled scablands of eastern Washington state. This is formed in a month. Okay? The biggest waterfall in the United States is dry. Okay? It is 6 times bigger than Niagara Falls. It is formed in 3 weeks there. Okay? Why? Because the comet debris blows up the ice caps. There's a huge lake nearby called Lake Missoula. The ice dams that hold back Lake Missoula, which is gigantic, fail, and it all goes downriver just like that. And then all this debris, all this heat, all the gases, all of that go up into the atmosphere, high into the atmosphere, into the stratosphere, and it stays put for a long, long time. Okay? And it gets perpetually dusky out for probably a decade. And that's it for the Pleistocene megafauna. The mammoths, the mastodons, the tigers, the camels, the horses, the lions, and all that. Done. Done. The Clovis people are heard from no more. The exquisite Clovis points that I showed you before disappear from the record, the soil record, period. Gone. They are snuffed out. And what happens now is that the Ice Age reverses dramatically. And something called the Younger Dryas climate event, which is 1,300 years long, takes place. Okay? It becomes ultra cold. Now, if you survive this, and your North American continent has burned out from underneath you, and your giant food supply has disappeared, you got a tough row to hoe when it's super cold outside. The human populations here, in Russia, in Europe, collapse. And I'm setting you up for something wonderful. Okay? I've given you the disaster, but I'm actually going to set you up for something wonderful. Now, for millennia, the evidence is lied hidden beneath the soils of North America. But if you look carefully, you can see a line that's black. Black. It is all over North America. It is in New Mexico. It is in Michigan, on and on. That black mat is carbon. It is soot from a continental fire. And in that carbon are all kinds of exotic elements and very exotic carbons, which I won't go into. Strange stuff is in that, including trillions, literally, of nano-diamonds that you can't see with your naked eye. They are ultra tiny, and they're diamonds. And why are they diamonds? Because the impacts are so intense that they can turn carbon into diamonds instantly. North America, though, will take centuries to recover, but it recovers. The forests come back, the grasslands come back. The animals that we are familiar with here and now in New England come back, okay? All the animals that come back, by and large, are small, with the exception maybe of the bison, but the bison is no longer as large as it used to be, okay? And the Native American ancestors show up here, okay? And they sweep across the continent, and they sweep into New England, and they set up shop, and we are somewhat familiar with the fact that there are Native Americans here. The Europeans eventually interacted with, of course. Some of these people may be survivors. The Clovis may actually be some of these, the ancestors of these people too, because there probably were some survivors. And they come into the Connecticut River Valley, and they come into the Ashwellet River Valley, and they're going to hunt game in the lands that we have right here, okay? And they live in small, communal, tribal groups tied to trading federations all over the Northeast. And all over the continent, there's probably 50 million of them by the time the Europeans show up. And these people, these wonderful people, many tribes all over the continent, all the way down into Mexico, all the way into Canada, they will suffer their own near mass extinction event of their own at the hands of disease primarily, and some warfare with Europeans. Here we are. I knew we were going to get to Pisgah someday. This is today. This is 2018, if I remember correctly, and that's a picture of Whale Rock in Pisgah State Park. And Pisgah appears as it does today because those events that took place shaped what we have here today, okay? The wildlife we see, the nature of the north-south running valleys, okay? Shaped by glaciers, no doubt, but also shaped by that cataclysmic run of water. North-south, north-south, okay? Because the comets come in from the north, okay? Our landscape is aimed toward the Atlantic. Water goes downhill, okay? And we don't face this when we hike in Pisgah, okay? That's a saber-toothed cat. It stands about that high at the shoulder. I mean, this world, in a geological sense, is one snap of the fingers from where we are today. We don't live in that world. We don't. We live in our world because of the events that took place. We no longer have 8-month winters, and or do we? And Pisgah is not inhabited by Clovis people, nor Abenaki Native Americans either. It's inhabited by the descendant of the first Europeans, or one of the first bands of Europeans to come here. There's all kinds of dickering about that, but anyway. And we live... I told you I was going to lighten things up a bit. We live in a new world. Literally, a new world. Okay? You and I are residents of something that was created for us by cosmic events. Literally. And you know, it's nice to get away from that new world once in a while. By taking a hike or a kayak or a ride around in Pisgah State Park. And then I'll end with this. Anybody have any questions at all? Remember, a lot of this is new science. Last 10 years. Go ahead.
When you were talking about the Ice Age coming down on North America, you mentioned the Andes. I've never thought of it. What happened? Was there an Ice Age that came up from the South Pole too?
Well, the whole entire world is caught in the grips of cold climate. Okay, so the Andes don't have an ice cap on them per se, but they have heavy ice and snow load lower down in the Andes than would exist today.
Was there an Ice Age in the southern?
There would definitely be an ice age in the southern, but in a sense that ice age hasn't even left the southern pole at all. Antarctica is at the South Pole, doesn't get enough sun to lose its ice cap. Okay? Go ahead.
I have two questions. One is, how thick is that carbon
The layer.
band? Yeah.
It's called the black mat. Okay? The black mat is just carbon, as I mentioned. It is also the remains of algae that take over, okay, to feed off of all the dead living things that are on the planet in the biosphere. Okay, the decomposers take over. Okay, and they leave their traces in that black mat too. Very narrow. You can go in there, you can dig it out. It's actually not even very dense. You know, you can actually use your fingers and scrape at it.
Well, and my second question, you said there was 10 years of such thick dust. So in those 10 years, were any plants able to grow to sustain life?
That's a good question. They think that some plants that live in low life underneath understories thrive. Okay, it takes a long time for the normal plants that are high in the biosphere. What am I trying to say? You know, the maples or whatever, and the birches that come back in. Sure, some plants are able to survive that. Okay, but it does take a long time, and that's one of the reasons why the giant animals die off. There may have been, should probably have been survivors for the giant animals, you know, of the giant animals, but there's no food for them, or not enough food for them. They just can't, they've taken a hit, a severe hit, and now there's nothing to feed off of. The predators lose the big predators lose their big prey, there's nothing for them to feed on, they disappear. Okay? And it's a chain of events, it's a snowball event. It gets worse and worse and worse until the atmosphere scrubs itself out. Same thing happened 65 million years ago. Okay? Asteroid hits, the dinosaurs take a hit, volcanism when the dinosaurs are at the end of their reign, volcanism in India becomes catastrophic because of the strike in the Yucatan, and it stays dark, literally dark, for a decade. Okay? So much soot and ash and whatever in the upper atmosphere. Something similar to that, not to the extent, but something similar to that takes place 2,800 years ago. Okay? Now this is, like I said, this is new science, relatively new science. Since the mid-90s or so, it's been compiling and compiling. A lot of researchers are out there now trying to scrape that all together to make a cohesive picture of this thing that happened. But this is catastrophist science, right? And catastrophism doesn't sit well with scientists until recently. And what changed their minds recently, this is fact. The comet Shoemaker-Levy gets caught in Jupiter's gravitational field in the 90s. And the comet that's caught up breaks apart into 21 different objects, just like here. Okay? And these are bigger. And Jupiter pulls them down one after the other over the course of a day or two. And what they see from the telescopes trained on Jupiter is plumes of debris and ash and smoke and whatever as large as the size of the Earth. And it makes it like a necklace of these plumes around the southern sphere, southern portions of Jupiter. That changed scientists' minds just like that. Catastrophe does happen. It's happened 5 times, mass extinctions 5 times in the history of life, at least from the Cambrian period where the trilobites are running around, till now. We are, now forgive me because I'm going to stretch a little here, we are in the middle of a 6th extinction. You see it in newspapers, whatever, but it really is something that began 41,000 years ago with a supernova event that strikes Asia, Australia, and the southern hemisphere. When the first wave of animals die, Australia loses all of its large animals then, 41,000 years ago. That's the first part of the extinction. That's the first event. 34,000, another wave. 18,000, another. Okay, 12,800, another. And here we are. Now get this. I'll shut up after this. We're not done with that comet stream. We are not. It's in the torrid meteor shower stream, which the Earth passes through twice a year. Okay? We could go through that stream for 10,000 years and see none of this. Very likely, that's what'll happen. But the next time we go through it, in the fall, that big stuff could be in there. Okay? That's what meteor streams are. We see them every day. There are blasts on the Earth, very small, every day. Every day. Okay? Most of them are out over the ocean. Nobody sees them. It doesn't make any impact on anybody. Doesn't hurt anybody. Nothing. Russia, Siberia, they're fairly common because Siberia is so huge, and now we have cameras on our cars, and people pick up these images, and you see them once a year. Somebody posts this once a year or two of a nice stream across the sky during the daylight. They're that bright, they're so close, and sometimes they explode in midair, and when they do, sometimes they break windows, sometimes they hurt people. 5,000 people were hurt about 10 years ago in a town in Russia by flying glass from one of these things, okay? So, not to, I don't want you to go home and not get some rest. Because I don't worry about it. I don't. I study it, I'm fascinated by it, it's wonderful stuff for me personally. But it's a real thing. And it made possible, here's the good part, it made possible this. It made possible that we're here in Chesterfield, sitting here as we are in a normal environment, doing what we do. Okay? And that's the good side of things.
Thank you very much. To introduce another Spofford resident, Lynne Borofsky, who will tell us a little bit about the hiking in Pisgah. Lynne is a conservation society, conservation commission member, and I would say she's the most knowledgeable person on Madame Cherie in this area. And if you'd like to see her work, stop by the Historical Society on a Thursday between 9:30 and 12, or on Sunday between 2 and 4, and you'll see a whole corner that Lynne has dedicated and developed on Madame Cherie. Thank you. Thank you.
So, first of all, I'm my own tech person, so I'm going to take this computer apart and put on my computer. But because I'm talking about hiking, and because I'm used to talking to 13-year-olds teaching, I'm going to ask, and this will be very loud, but I'm going to ask that each one of you stand up and stretch for 1 minute, and then sit back down. So, I'm going to talk about history, kind of fast forward a little bit. And my story begins in 1988. And in 1988, I met Tom Dustin, who was a good friend of mine. I met him at the Tiny Tots kindergarten, prior to having a public kindergarten in the Chesterfield School. And in 1988, he had an idea. And he wrote a letter. And he wrote a letter to conservation commissions in Cheshire County. Can you hear me, Jeff?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And his idea, it was a vision. And he said, I got this great idea. I think that there should be a greenway from Wantasket in Brattleboro all the way to Monadnock. And it should be linked by a trail. Greenway linked by a trail. Good idea. He sent it out. 1991, he connected with John Summers, who was part of Friends of Pisgah. John thought it was a good idea too. The really awesome thing about the idea is that putting this greenway or trail together was like a jigsaw puzzle. And there's Pisgah. It's like putting a puzzle together and the middle is done, because we already have hiking trails through Pisgah. So our work began on making links to get to Pisgah and get out of Pisgah to Monadnock. So right after that year, I joined the Conservation Commission, and we started with kind of what I call hiking boots on the ground work. We didn't do it alone, we did it with partners. We started working in Wantasket. We were really helped by the Forest Society, who had just received an amazing land grant from Ann Stokes. So the Madame Cherie Forest was available to start putting the trail through. Then a lot of bits and pieces were put together with a lot of generous landowners for easement for trails. And we got to Pisgah, and that was awesome. Then we jumped on the other side, and we started, in the middle of Pisgah. We're linked now with the Friends of Pisgah, but we knew that, we had that. We also worked with Hinsdale Conservation Commission. Then we jumped on the other side and started a very strong partnership with the Monadnock Conservancy, which put together and is putting together more pieces of the Greenway after Pisgah. It made such sense because it was right into Horatio Colony. Now we're partners with Antioch who runs the trails in the Horatio Colony Preserve, jumped onto the Keene Pathways group, onto the rail trail, out to Troy, linking up to Gap Mountain and to Monadnock. And indeed, the trail was fully completed in about 2016, and that's when we got permission to go through Pisgah with put our signs through Pisgah and figure out the trail, the 9-mile route through Pisgah. The entire trail is just under 50 miles. We have a couple of people now who are through hikers. We have 3 people who have done it in the last couple of weeks. There's a little competition for how much time. One of our cheaters hit a bike at Horatio Colony. And so they biked all the way through Keene till they got to Troy and dumped their bike. But it's a through hiker. So the next phase has been that this Wantastica to Monadnock Trail Coalition has been formed, so that all of the partners can work together to keep the trail maintained. So I'm a representative on that coalition as part of the Conservation Commission. So this summer, or this spring, skipping a little summer and fall, we've put together 9 sectional hikes. We just completed hike number 3. And the sectional hikes are dividing up the pieces, 1, 2, 3, 9 pieces. We're going to hike again on the 23rd, and we're leaving Pisgah, we're at Beals, going to Forest. There are handouts in the front for the next series of hikes. We're not going to hike over the hot summer weeks. We'll start again in September and finish at Monadnock on November 2nd. And that will be a hike up Monadnock. There's no transportation back. You have to come down Monadnock, and we'll have a celebratory dinner. So we've divided into 9 different hikes, and if you are interested, they're all our RSVPs because you can have rides back from them. So last June 2nd, we did the hike through Pisgah, so I took pictures along the hike, so I thought I would show you those to see where that trail goes. So, as you can see, this is the map of the entire, and here is the route through Pisgah. So we're starting in Kilburn and ending at Beals at Old Stone Mill off of Swansea Road. Oh, are you going to take me on the thing first? So we get started and we start at Kilburn. And we take the Davis Hill Trail up the side. That's the one in the front. The Davis Hill Trail is about 2 miles. It's about 1.92 miles. And here's the sign of the Greenway, the Wantasca Pisgah. And these blue diamonds are the blue diamonds that mark the trail all the way to Monadnock. So we're heading off on Davis Hill. And what's really fun is that we cross through our 3 towns. The first one, we leave Hinsdale and we go to Winchester, remember Pisgah. Our 13,500 miles, or acres, are through our 3 towns. So this is the shelter that the Friends of Pisgah have built. We call it the Doran Shelter, which is some things hold on to old names. These pictures were taken not last June 2nd, because I didn't go into the shelter, but it's a beautiful shelter, and if you ever want to stay there, it's first come, first serve, right, John? Right?
Yes.
And look at that outhouse. Isn't that amazing? And that was not taken last June, that was taken in the winter time, but it's just beautiful if you get a chance to just hike 2 miles into it. So now we're continuing on into the Davis, and we come to our first view, probably thanks to John Herrick. John, you want to say, what are we looking at?
Not sure which one that is.
That's on Davis Hill.
So we're looking west.
Yeah, we are.
It looks at Mount Snow and
Yeah.
Killington.
That's right. Yeah. So now we're heading from our first view. People are really, and this is Rob Coney, who hung the signs through all of Pisgah, and he's doing a little repair on the way. Heading on Davis Hill Trail, and then we will get to Baker Pond.
I'm going to turn the lights and see what
I just even looking up because my computer's so clear. So the Baker Pond Trail, so this is the pond. And then we're going to hook onto the Reservoir Trail. And those are the great Pisgah signs now that are lined. Then we go to the North Ponds Trail. Each one after Davis Hill is 2 miles. Each one after that is about a mile. It's a 9-mile total trip through Pisgah. You can tell the North Ponds Trail is more woodsy. There's our blue diamond showing us the way, arrows which will help. Another pass through Winchester back to Chesterfield. Leaving Chesterfield back to Winchester, it's really neat, it's a little corner, in and out and in and out. Aha! Look at the beautiful lady slippers. I think I have 2 of those, they were just beautiful. I'm not telling you where they are. Then this is heading towards Old Chesterfield Road. And actually, this is where we stopped for lunch because we were kind of outrunning the mosquitoes. And this seemed like a perfect place to have lunch.
New parking lot.
What?
Brand new parking lot.
Brand new parking lot. It's gorgeous. It was perfect for our lunch. And then we got going again. Remember, the old Chesterfield Road was once the highway between Winchester and Chesterfield. So it feels pretty much like a road now, John, doesn't it?
Yeah, almost.
Following our blue signs. And we're actually heading towards the Nash Trail. The Nash Trail is one of my favorites. It kind of goes in and out. And, I mean, come on, the moss, the fern growing on the moss. It's just beautiful in there. Then we next turn onto the Fulham Pond Trail. Again, our signs are right there to help you out. And we get to Beals Road, and this is our last mile. And our last mile up is pretty exciting because of Jack and Pulpit. Not telling where it is. A patch of that. And then we start with some stone walls because the Beals Trail has a lot of history, and there are some cellar holes and pieces on the Beals. And most impressive is the Latham Beals Cemetery, which everyone commented on is in such good shape. I mean, they were really impressed with we took some quick pictures there of the Beals and the Lathams, and it's a nice treat to be able to take a look. I think there's one really, this is a youngster, but look at that, 84 years old, James, 84 years old, that beautiful stone. 1792. So now we're heading towards the end of our road here, the end of the Beals Trail. There is an option to go up Beals Knob to be able to see a view. We didn't take it that day, we just stayed on the Beals Trail. And there's another small pond as we're ending, and we're soon out of Pisgah, leaving Pisgah State Park and the end of our adventure that day. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to just see the route that we had taken. And like he said it's 9 miles. It's just long. It's not strenuous. It's just a long, nice day. And it really takes about 4.5 hours, 4 hours to go through. So, anyway, got the brochures for the other links, and I also, on the table is a map with the trail that we've marked through Pisgah marked. So,
Before our movie is being set up, John? You want to set up the movie? Okay, sorry. All right, before the movie is being set up, I have a request from our publicity director, Donna Roscoe, to find out how many of you are not from Chesterfield. Now, we use some different means of publicity this time, going through libraries, going through historical societies, a couple of papers. Can a couple of people tell us how you heard about this event?
The Commons?
The Commons. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
There's a paper that was in Keene that I picked up, and
It was in the Monadnock News.
Sentinel. Sentinel.
The Sentinel. Okay. The newspapers. Thank you very much. And
I'd just like to say, I think there was a poster, a small poster, in Putney at the co-op.
no, I don't think we hit that. This is the
Well, I
poster.
saw it somewhere, and this afternoon I traipsed all over from the library to the bank, to the co-op,
Could have been the library.
and the library. It was gone. And I knew it was the 13th. Anyway, so I
Edit it out.
asked my dependent computer.
Keene Sentinel had put it.
Well, Pisgah Place Park was made in about 2005, and I had a call from a Harry Prouty this last week, who was a lumberman. And he was very opinionated on Pisgah, for sure. But he told me an interesting story that while they're setting up, I'll tell you. When he was 10 years old, his father took him on a trip, said it was going to be special, and took him down Poocham Road here in town. And when they got to the Little Red Schoolhouse, they took the road that goes down to River Road. And about halfway down in a field, he stopped. And he looked up, and there was this huge, huge pine tree. And took him to the pine tree, and it still had the king's mark. It was the last tree in this area that had the king's mark. That tree was to be saved as a mask for the fleas. I thought that was pretty cool. I love listening to it.
Where was he calling from?
He lives in Winchester, and he wanted to come tonight. He evidently keeps the history of the logging in the area and has kept it up through the years. But his wife is very ill, and